This is the fourth quick tip now in the series we're doing on my process of painting, answering requests from someone who asked the question. So in this one, I've already done the block in. That was in the previous quick tip. Then the quick tip before that, I did discovering the light and shadow. In the first one, I did getting familiar with the subject, doing the drawing that gets familiar with the subject. So in this one, we're going to do what I call refinement. Now, by refinement, I don't mean just details. Details don't mean anything if they don't do anything. But what I want to look at now is what do I want to emphasize about this rooster? And the way I work, I don't always define every single thing. But I like to give emphasis to the things where I want your attention to go, and then de-emphasize areas that want to maybe not quite pull your attention there so strongly. I'm going to start here in the beak area. And I want to start in the negative area of the beak and to shape it. And if you'll notice here in the negative area of this beak, it is a little bit darker than I have there. So what I'll just do there, I'll bring some of this transparent oxide red down. I'll bring some of the ultramarine blue down and give me a very, very dark, neutralized and cooler version of that transparent oxide red. And let's just move right in here and move that right up into that beak area and just shape it from the negative side, just like that. And then I'll let that blend in to the other rest of the background area. Now that's a very sharp delineation I just made there. So I want to soften that a bit. Before I do so, I want to also shape it from the bottom. So that goes up a bit, and then like that comes in, and then I can kind of give that a little bit more shape to that wattle portion right there, and then blend this out right like that. Now, I'll rinse the brush. Now, what that does, it begins to give attention there to that beak area. Let's push that in just a little bit more right in here. Oops. Pull that down like that. Now if I dry the brush off really, really good now, and I can just soften that very slightly. So the refinement area has to do with all the things we do to give attention where you want it. I'll change brushes here now to a smaller brush because I want to give emphasis there by having the value difference, very, very strong value contrast there, and also a sharper edge. So I'm going to move into the white and pull it down in here and just raise that value very slightly of that white, and then just place that right in there and give that sharpness to that where the light's catching that beak, and give it that strong value contrast. You see already there your eye will go more towards that. Now I will then begin to kind of build on that using what I'm seeing, the information I'm seeing here in that reference. And I'm seeing that there's a little bit of that reflected light. There's a little bit of this color from the wattle here reflecting back onto that right in there. So I'll just put that right there. What we do in refinement, what I do in refinement, I depend an awful lot on the information that's in the image. Depending on what the painting is, I will often, in refinement, I will often just respond to what the painting is doing. But in this case, for a while, I need to still get the information from right here. Now, if you consider that information, not look at it as rooster, but just look at it as information. What I mean by information, I mean which way is that shape going? What value is that shape? What color is that shape? What is all that doing? And allowing the brush to move in the direction that I see those shapes moving. So I can do that right there. Now, if I want to give a little bit more variation on that, as like I see there, I can do that. But right now, I'd like to just move forward. Let's give that just a little bit more definition right in there. Move forward, and what do I see happening right up in here? Now I'm going to stick with a really small brush for just a little while. I'm going to pull some of this white down, and right up here in this pile, and from this value area of this red-orange, I'm going to add just a little bit of white to that to change the character of that red to that sort of a knock a little bit of that yellow out of the red is what that white's doing there. And use that now to kind of shape this area right in here. And just work that in. I think maybe that needs to have just a little bit more of the yellow in it, so let's do that. Where I see it right in here. And just sort of define that area. And the same thing is happening right over in here. And this gives us the variation that we see there, and also gives us that lighter value. Now where we see that lighter value going, the lighter value that is catching a more we don't see that as much yellow in that, and so I'm going to then carry that over just a little bit in here, and I'll go back to my wider brush now and define that a little bit more distinctly. Now here it begins to get a little bit darker. In fact, I think before I do that, I'm going to give this a little bit more of a scumble in here and catch a little bit more of that light right in there, right in this area right here. Give that a little bit more of a scumble. I need to catch a little bit more of that light right in there. That light is much stronger light. There we go. And I'm going to use more generalized brush strokes now to catch that over the eye there. And then under the eye we have that stronger light. So if you allow the light, the value of where you see an area, allow the value and the color to guide where you put it, you don't have to worry, because then you will be responding to what you see, and your results will end up being pretty close to what you see there. So let's move that over. I'm seeing that just a little bit darker right in there. So let's get that a little darker. Now that need to kind of blend those edges just a bit right in there, and get right into that eye area. Now the eye area is also something I want to place a little bit more emphasis on. Let's see, I really believe that comes over just a little bit more right in there. So let's just pull this over, go back into this darker area right here, and we'll just pull that over a little bit more right in here, and then stroke it downward like we see that stroking down there. We see it stroking down there, so we'll do that too. Right in here, a little bit more like that. Now I see that darker area right here, so my tendency is just to follow where my eye goes. If my eye goes in there, then I'm going to follow where my eye goes. And then if my eye gets interested in something else, like now, rather than the eye, my eye is going right up in here, and say, okay, let's do a little bit more in this area right in here. Let's get that just a little bit more. Let's get that a little bit more varied. The values varied. Going to need to mix more of that darker ultramarine blue and ultramarine blue and red, red orange, the transparent oxide red. Let's see if that doesn't do it. Yeah, I believe so. Yes. Okay. Now you see we have a variation in there. Some of the we see some of the red a little bit more, and we see some of the darker value, darker shadow areas a little bit more. That will help also indicate that texture that we're seeing there, and how clear, how crisp do I want to make this edge right here. I can just sort of do something like that, and then give it a little bit more depth to that shadow right in here, where I hit that with that darker version. So I'm just building the values and the variations right on top. Now, I said this is going to be refinement, but refinement takes quite a while. So I think what I will be doing here for you is I'll be refining this to a certain degree, but I doubt seriously if I will get it to the point that I would want it. Now you see, so don't look for that. Let's just discover what's here, place it here to the point where I feel I might have given you some guidance on that and show you how my process works, which is what the question was all about. But don't worry about making a finished piece out of it, because we're talking about a time factor there, and I'm not always able to do a totally finished piece in one sitting, because I need time a lot of times just to live with it and see what's happening there. So I'm going into that background just a little bit more. Now I'd like to give that background a little bit more expressiveness, and so let's I'll go get a little bit more of that lighter blue in there. I'm going to cool that just a hair right in here. Add just a little bit more cool into that warm, and give that a little bit more depth by alternating the cool and the warm in that background. And I think since I'm doing this, I think I'll do the same thing there. And now I'm going to work those edges a little bit softer. I want those edges a little bit softer. And if I get a little spray paint right there, sometimes that can actually add to the interest of the whole piece. So don't worry about that. Right. Now I'll go back. Let's see. See, we can almost begin to see that rooster's head emerge now. I'm going to go back and get this brush. I think I'll wash it really, really good. Rinse it, I should say. There's a difference between rinsing and washing. See, this little piece right here interests me, and that comes down right in there. So I'm going to go back into that really high. Now the high saturation that I'm beginning to work the piece, the higher saturation can begin to play a role. Now that's pretty dark. I've got that higher saturation. I'm going to lower the value just a little bit, get that a little bit darker than I see it, and just get that little bit of emphasis right in there, and let that sort of flare. Let's if I just put a little bit of that higher saturation in various areas there. And I think while I'm doing that, now that I've got the higher saturation, my eye begins to look for higher saturation. So I can do that. See that? Maybe that needs to come down a little bit. So this is a place where I can do that too. And place the higher saturation a little bit more right in here. Let that come out just a little bit more right in there. And there's a little higher saturation right in here. So oftentimes your eyes the eyes will want to move from one place to the other. So the idea is not to try to finish one area before going to another, but to allow your eyes to move throughout the image and work on one area and then work on another area, and just sort of let the whole thing evolve. Pull that saturation out now, and let's see what we're going to do right in here. Okay, let's just get that sort of blended. This may end up being where the D emphasis happens, where not very much happens in the way of defining that rooster. I'm going to go back now into the eye area and go back to the smaller brush, because the eye area is a smaller area and requires a smaller brush. I like to build the eye from dark to light, and we've got several parts of that eye that we discovered when we were doing the drawing. And so I'm going to go back into this very dark area here, and let's see, kind of brace my hand. I'm going to place that, be sure I place that in relationship to here, the darker area. Is that going to do it? See, that is the shadow area of the eye, and I'll let that shadow area build back. I need more of the darker paint. Now, so I noticed that I'm using the ultramarine blue more than I am the let's just a little bit of that green in there. I'm using the ultramarine blue more than I am the blue green. Ultramarine blue is simply the blue that leans towards violet, but it seems to be it seems to be doing the job. It helps desaturate and certainly gives us that darker value. Let's see if that will do it. All right, now that I have that dark is very dark. There we go, right in there, and then the shape does that. The shape of the dark. That's what I'm looking for. Is the shape of the dark, and then we have some shadow that is moving kind of like that underneath it, and we have that little bit of a shadow at the top. So how detailed I'm going to get that eye, how much of that am I going to put in it? I think maybe we'll just kind of see how it goes. Now, what's happening right here is we have that yellow orange right here, but it's not that, what I'm seeing there, it's not really quite that saturated. I actually need more of a red violet. I think maybe I'll reach right in here just a little bit, and then reach in here for the ultramarine blue and kind of get a desaturated violet going, or feeling of violet. And that's more towards green. Might have to add just a little bit of the red violet. Now sometimes this happens. Sometimes you have those colors figured out, and then sometimes we get into an area and we discover that we really need something leaning in another direction. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Now I did all of that right there. I do want to now, I'm going to put white in that to raise the value of it, so that the value is going to be closer to that value of yellow orange. There, a lot of times people can make mistake of thinking that when you desaturate a color, then that whatever you do for the desaturation is going to be adequate. There we go. That's the red. That's the violet I'm looking for right there. But the value, when you're adjusting saturation, the values need to be very, very close. So if you start out with a darker value, you've got to get that lighter. You've got to get it more in the value range of the color you're working with, or it will go darker, go much darker. And that's really a lot of people have problems with the whole area of saturation. It's just because we've got to consider value and saturation. Remember, color is made of three parts. The hue does one thing, the value does something else, and saturation does something else, and they all three go into forming the colors we see. So we have to take all three in consideration when we are painting. Now here's all that for that right there. This is what I wanted with that color right there. And let's just give that a little it's a tiny little curve. Whoops, I overstroked that, and I know better than to do that. Let's try that again. Right in there. There we go. And then we have that little bit of light, and pull that lighter right here. Right there. Like that. Now, we can move back into the dark. This is going to be really, really tricky. And form that little bit of dark we see right there that forms that part of the eye. Guess it might be the iris of the eye right in there. Okay, there we go, kind of like that. And now we do need a little bit of that to show a little bit more of the light above it. So I'll show just a little bit more, add a little white into this right here to show a little bit more of the light above it here. But that light is not as light as you may think it is. It feels lighter because of the area in which it's located, but it's not as light as we might think it is. And then above that, we see the red-orange. And so we'll do that. In fact, that red-orange is lighter. And I think it does take on that characteristic, it does, that where it's more red than orange, and so we use white to knock that down. There we go. Kind of like that. Alright, and so now I'm going to be sort of use this kind of a hatching stroke here, because I'm seeing that move in that kind of textured direction. So I'll just use that sort of hatching stroke to along with that color to pull it up as I see it going up there. And that probably does the job. If I want to give that eye a little sparkle, and let's see here, probably need to reach for this area right in here and just kind of give it a little hit right there, tiny little hit. All right, now so I want to give some emphasis to the eye. I need to raise some value right in here and show this much lighter. It's much lighter than I thought. Let's see. This is a better way to, if you want to be sure that your lights are in your whatever the values, you want to be sure they are pretty much in the area of what you're seeing. Then a good way to do that is to do this: mix the color and hold your brush up next to that color and check it out. Now you see what I'm doing here. I'm just kind of giving these little textured strokes to give that interpretation I'm seeing there. All right, this adds a little bit more yellow added to it, and that goes down in here. These little textured strokes should indicate that as it's going down there. So you can see that what I'm doing there is simply following where this leads me. I want a part of that is learning how. The reason I emphasize seeing, learning how to see, is I ask the question of what value, what color, what saturation, what value, what hue, what saturation, and then if I've got textures there, do I see what the textures are made of different values? What I see, what are the colors, what are the values of those? And that's so you always ask the question in terms of the visual language, in terms of the visual elements. So you will. My experience is that if we just look at what it is as a rooster cone or a rooster whatever, if we just look at what it is, we're not going to see what's there. But if we look at it in terms of values and colors, we will. Now what I'm seeing is this is way too much space between that and that. And that happened during the initial drawing. So I can do I have my choice there is to extend this out just a little bit, or maybe extend this out just a little bit. That's probably what I should do right there. And ideally, there we go. See, that makes it a lot better if I extend that out. Ideally, I would have caught that when I was doing the initial drawing. Now, we can rebuild this. That just happens to be a dark area there, and so we can then rebuild that to, and we'll make that area feel that it fits in a little bit better. And that doesn't need to be, the edge doesn't need to be quite so sharp right there. And then that begins to make all this other make sense. So we're checking on the time here. Now, just as I expected, there's not, I have only really just got started in showing you how I go about refining, how I go about placing the emphasis in a subject in the way I want where I want the emphasis to be, and the way I would like the subject to be interpreted. But it is a long process, especially when you are looking very, very closely and allowing the image itself to guide you. It is a long process, and it requires just going very, very meticulously, very slowly, well, not necessarily meticulously, but observing here and place here what you observe here. So I'm going to, I'm not going to try to force this into a finished piece, but I'm going to stop pretty soon, pretty much right in here, I think. We're about right there. I think what I would continue to do, I'd continue to observe here and place here, observe here and place here. Continue to build the background along as I build the subject itself and moving in that direction. So I am going to stop and just say that the process of observing and then interpreting what you observe is what I wanted to show you here. It's not important that you see me actually finish a painting, although some of you think it is. But if this interests you, if you don't have a sequence for working, then watch these 4 quick tips and follow just a sequence, not using a rooster, not trying to copy what I'm doing here, but find your own subject and try following that sequence in the way that I'm trying to guide you through from the drawing to discovering the light and shadow to the block in, and then carrying it to a finished piece only in the way that you would like to see it finished, but placing the attention on where you want to place the emphasis. Be sure to view all of our quick tips, and while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.